Hello, I am Thalie Martini, CEO of Breast Cancer UK, and welcome to the Be Well podcast. Today I'm going to be talking to a dynamic guest who is a trailblazer, literally kicking down barriers for women in sports. In 2021, she became the assistant head of coaching at Queen's Park Rangers, and in doing so became the first woman and the first person of South Asian heritage to hold such a position in English football. And in 2017, she was awarded an MBE for her services to football and diversity in sport, notably for her fantastic work with organisations such as Show Racism, The Red Card. She's a published author and founder of her own community program focused on widening access and promoting health in sport. There's a lot to say about this inspiring guest, but I think it's probably best coming directly from her. I'm delighted to welcome Manisha Tailor. Thank you so much for joining me, Manisha.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
It's great to have you. Now, I know you've achieved an awful lot in your life, but I'm actually interested in starting at the beginning. You were a really sporty kid, from what I understand, and in particular, you loved football. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to play football as a young girl growing up in the UK?
I absolutely loved playing football, and I was fortunate that I come from a very sporty family, and I grew up playing all sports, whether it was football, squash, a little bit of cricket. My dad used to take me and my brother to the local snooker hall. We used to play pool and snooker. So I was quite fortunate that I was around parents who equally really loved sport. But football was always the one. And, whenever there were games on the weekend, my uncles would come round and we would gather around, and my cousins and enjoy the beautiful game. But growing up as a young girl, particularly as a South Asian girl, if I'm honest, in the early 90s, I didn't at the time recognize or question, am I different to the stereotypical norm? What I did recognize that there were very few girls' teams as a whole. I played for my school team. And I remember it was me and my best friend, Jenna, and she played for our local girls at Centre of Excellence at the time, which was Barnet, and they were holding trials. And I went along as this 9-year-old with Jenna's mum, and my mum was more than happy for me to go, go and attend the trial. And I had a great time. I remember it was in a school hall, very different to I'm sure, obviously what it looks like now within the women's game, which is absolutely brilliant in terms of how far the game has come and how much it's growing. But it certainly wasn't like that for me, and I got in, and it was fantastic to be able to go home to say that wow, I've got into Barnet. But for my mum, what was really challenging was the fact that she didn't see many South Asian girls playing football, but also the level of commitment now that would be required to take me to training, to take me to fixtures, which was a very different dynamic to me playing for my school team with my brother, because me and my brother in this, twins in the same class, in the same year, it was easy. We could go to school together. She could, the pick up and drop offs and so forth was all very, very convenient. And my brother equally played other sports, which meant that there was a high level of commitment. And working within a professional setup now, I recognise how much commitment goes into actually these kids and these players being able to get there, particularly those who are very young and will rely on parents and carers to get them, to the sessions and to the games on time. So I realised that I was never going to be a footballer, but continued enjoying the game. And it was quite sad that when I went to secondary school, we couldn't play at that time in the early 90s mixed football, and there weren't enough girls to fulfill a team. So I pretty much fell out of it for a little while and picked up again through my early 20s. And it was actually when Bend It Like Beckham came out that inspired me again to sign up to a local grassroots club and and continued playing until I fell into coaching, just simply because of the hours and the commitment. I couldn't do both. So I've definitely, thoroughly enjoyed being part of the game, being a youngster, and seeing transition both as a female, but also as a South Asian female, in terms of the landscape and the growth of the game to what it was like when I was a youngster.
And is the landscape better now? Were it for a young person like yourself now, where would she be, do you think?
Hopefully, playing for a club, playing in the WSL, playing for representing your national team, which would be, I suppose, any budding footballer's desire. And I look back now and I just think, if the growth that we see now in terms of pathways from grassroots right the way up to whether it's playing club level or national level existed then maybe it would be different. But life is about maybes, right? And what if this happened, or and I'm thankful for where I am now, because had it not been for the passion and love for the game, and an endeavour and commitment to want to still work with young people from teaching into football, perhaps I wouldn't be where I am now. But it's great to see. I think that the game is definitely moving in the direction we want it to go, in being ethnically, culturally diverse, in there being greater participation, definitely at grassroots level. And I'm seeing firsthand some of the wonderful work that community groups are certainly doing. And from the South Asian community, which is great. And I was on an England camp recently, and there was a South Asian girl in the under-15s. And that for me, I approached her and I said, I'm really proud to say that there is a girl with South Asian heritage wearing the England national shirt. And, that she should be proud, her family should be proud. And I have my final camp in May, and fingers crossed I get to see her then as well.
That's fantastic. And really, it's on your shoulders, isn't it? That a lot of these young women can say, it's thanks to the work that people like yourself have done, that they can appreciate and see a future in football that's going to be ever more promising,
Absolutely. And I'd also say, Thalie, on that, I think it's as a result of the commitment that the parents really put in, because you can have people like myself and others who will have the commitment and endeavour to keep persisting and want to create change on the pitch. But it takes such a wider team to help develop and nurture players. And that first and foremost comes from those who are committed to get them there. And then governing bodies in ensuring that there are accessible pathways. And I think that's getting better now, which is why we are in the position that we're in.
And it's really interesting that you mentioned Bend It Like Beckham, because it's those little cultural references where young girls can see potentially themselves on the pitch that might prompt them to think, well, actually, maybe I want to do it, and having those role models. And it's so important. And yourself, you're now a role model, which is so important for these young women. Now, looking again at your career, I understand that you were a primary school teacher, but then you decided to quit in 2011. So why this change in career, and how did you end up? We talked a little bit about your passion for football, but how did you end up on this path of football glory where you are now?
I think it was a natural progression. I have always loved working with young people and went into primary education. And funny enough, I didn't specialise in sport or PE. I specialised in early childhood education and had a real passion for child development and understanding, learning, and pedagogy. And it was really through the love of football, to be honest, that I found in the early 2000s. I qualified in 2001. And certainly in the early 2000s, the variety of external sporting activities and the provision that we see now certainly didn't look like that back then. And I was lucky that I had some great head teachers that I worked under who allowed me to start up lunchtime clubs, after school clubs. And it was pretty much going on YouTube, having a look at drills and pretending that I could coach and just giving it a go. And it was through the different schools that I worked in that I grew these various projects that would be, in addition to my classroom role. And, gradually as I then went into strategic roles, in primary schools, you have various different heads of departments. So, 1 year it was head of science, and then, head of external visits and head of assessment and so forth. And then the latter part of my career was deputy head and training to be a head teacher. And I was fortunate that one of the schools that I worked in neighboured Wembley Stadium, and it was based in the heart of Brent. And Rachel Yankee's football programme was based in Brent, as somebody who, as a former footballer herself, grew up within that area and wanted to give back. So Rachel used to come into the school, and part of my role was to see how we can combine football with education, particularly utilising her as a role model and enhance numeracy and literacy skills of some of our year 4, 5 and 6 children. She knew that I was coaching the schools team, but also knew that I didn't have any coaching qualifications at that time. And, kind of signposted me and showed me how you can go about it, because I think you only know what you know. And I didn't know that coaching qualifications existed, to be honest. And it wasn't a field or an industry that I knew much about. So off I then went. I did my level 1, at the time of what it was called the level 1. I did the level 2. And it was in the 2011, it was purely circumstance based, because my ambition was so I, qualified with my MPQH with the view of I wanted my own school and have sport as a big part of that. But circumstances, and I suppose, I'm very much a believer in things happen for a reason. That took its course, I suppose, and I found myself exploring football. And one of the key drivers to that was my brother, because when he suffered from a mental health breakdown when we were 18, but football was something that we always connected with and always shared. And there was just a lot going on in that year in particular, with me transitioning from I left my role as a deputy head and was trying to transition into what I didn't know then. It was almost like an unknown. What am I actually going to do? That decision was really triggered by exhaustion, just being really tired. There was a heavy, it would be a 4-hour round trip sometimes to commute to the school. And I felt, and my mum also had a triple heart bypass in the same year. And I was trying to also finish my dissertation for my master's in leadership that I was doing all in that same period. So I felt the best thing to do would be to come out for a school term and then look for a role the following year for January. Anyway, I suppose the man upstairs had other plans, because I then found myself in football and reconnected with people that I'd connected with through doing my grassroots and community work, which I was doing actually on the weekend, and found pockets of work really, and found myself exploring something new, something different, whether it was going to be going through the head of education route, whether it was going to be on the pitch. I, to be honest, didn't know, but there were some great people early on in my career, like Alex Welsh, Matthew Joseph, Charlotte Edwards, who, like Alex at the time, worked with the FA and still chief executive at London Playing Fields Foundation. Matthew Joseph with the FA, who helped me along my tuition for coaching qualifications and pathway. And then Rachel was great in terms of being a brilliant mentor and was helping me while I was working on her grassroots program. So there were various people, and I think those connections became key in terms of the next part of what this career now looks like. Because had it not been, for instance, for Charlotte Edwards, who was at Middlesex County at the time, a centre manager, or Kira Allen not providing me with an opportunity, I wouldn't have had the exposure to what that type of setup looks like. And then found myself doing some work at Middlesex Girls Development Centre and Centre of Excellence, on a part-time basis, and then was doing pockets of other work to try and make this work. And that also included running disability programs and mental health programs that I found would benefit my brother and people like my brother. And I suppose it went from there, really. And then coincidentally, and again, connections work in a bizarre way, met Chris Ramsey. Chris Ramsey wasn't at QPR at the time that I then started. He was still at Tottenham. But we had a conversation, and I suppose then the rest was history, because I reconnected with him again in 2016 and came in as a volunteer I did just under 200 hours of volunteering, and you're starting from scratch. And I think that's the tricky thing, because so I went into QPR when I was 36, and you're going in later in your life and you're finding yourself again, because you're now almost reinventing yourself in this new career. You have financial commitments and life commitments as you do. And it was quite tricky trying to work out, how am I actually going to do this? But, my mum and my family were incredibly supportive. And it was, I think with anything, right, you've got willpower, you have strong mental mindset to
and
want
possibly
to
a bit
achieve.
of talent as well.
Definitely. And linking into that, absolutely, that I think it has, it was having the qualifications, having the endeavor to want to learn. So it was learning the football stuff, but combining it with the fact that actually I had a real understanding of strategic leadership, working in education for 10 years before I transitioned into football. And like you said, it was being able to combine that. And Chris Ramsey was brilliant in helping me do that and taking me under his wing. And my career then kind of blossomed from there, really, from volunteer, part-time under nines assistant to then kind of head coach, foundation phase lead, assistant head of coaching, and actually now head of coach development.
Wow. Yeah. So you've progressed again.
Yeah. There was a change again a few months ago, and that now sees me as head of coach development, directly working with the coaches from the under nines right the way to the under 21s, and it's fantastic because I have been there 8 years, so it means I've got a real good rapport with all of the players and all of the staff as well.
Congratulations. Now I want to move to a topic really that's really important for us at Breast Cancer UK. And that's that we spend a lot of time encouraging people to take up exercise. So exercise and physical activity, because it's a fantastic way to stay well. It's a fantastic way to maintain good mental health, but also to fight off diseases such as breast cancer. And in fact, regular physical activity can reduce our breast cancer risk by around 20%. Now, breast cancer mostly affects women, as we know, so it is really important to be able to support women to get physically active. Now, you've said yourself that barriers do exist for women trying to pursue any kind of active lifestyle. And so can you tell us a bit what you think, what you've seen these barriers to be, and importantly, what can we all do to overcome them?
From what the conversations that I've been having more recently with women who have this real commitment, and not necessarily just with football, but with physical activity, has been around one, accessibility. So for accessibility from a South Asian community, but across all ages. And the other is around role modeling. And what's been great is I've been able to connect with many other different women who are from a South Asian background, have a real passion for exercise, and however focus on the health benefits of physical activity. And one example I'll give you is Lavina Mehta. She's a personal trainer, has been really active in working with all age groups, multicultural women from multicultural backgrounds, has recently written her book, which focuses on the importance of physical activity, but actually with a lens on menopause. And that's just an example of how she's utilizing her life experience and her passion and commitment to know and understand what health benefits can be gained from physical activity, and has video clips. She has, a YouTube channel, whether it's podcasts, but she's been very active in really being visible. And I think what's helped with that, therefore, is it shows that you've got somebody who's actively been a role model, is using a platform and a voice, is recognizing actually the accessibility part for older women or women going through hormonal changes, because we know that our bodies change naturally, and in when our body does start changing, it can make us feel different, and that will affect people in different ways. And that's another piece that she's also been speaking about, that what it looks like for one will be very different to what it looks like for the other, but with a real lens on the health benefits. And she'll show and demonstrate very simple exercises, regardless of age, regardless of disability, that anybody can take part in. And I think that's great. And there are so many others. There's another one I can even give you, Sharon G, who's she's very much again into personal training, but speaks about disability and what it was like for her growing up with a disability and how she felt. So it's been on twofold, really. So one was also around eliminating the taboo. The other, we spoke about the visibility and showing that actually disability doesn't define you. So that's where that accessibility piece comes in around. It doesn't actually matter, that you can still take part. And she shows her like daily life through videos. She's active in going out, in the public and going into schools, speaking with various audiences. And that's just two. And there are so many others that I could give you. And I think, therefore, we're in so much of a better space because there are individuals who really have this commitment and understanding through life personal experience of the benefits that physical activity can have on your health.
And it really makes so much sense that the more role models we have, particularly who we feel we can relate to, because a lot of our messaging is around, well, the kind of physical activity you do is really varied and all of it can benefit your health, including brisk walking or, carrying the shopping, that kind of thing. And it's getting that message across through those role models. It's great to have role models like yourself who are, athletes and have achieved a lot in terms of physical activity, but equally those out there who are, people we can relate to, because that's where we see that women are more likely to feel more comfortable taking up physical activity, to feel less self-conscious. That's often a part of it as well, but also to recognize that you don't have to be an athlete to get all the benefits as well, So I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about another great achievement, and that's your sessions and outreach program. So it's a bit related really to the last discussion. And as far as I understand, this program aims to build better infrastructure in sports to support women across the community. So can you tell us a little bit about this program, why you founded it and what it was that you wanted to achieve with it?
So when I took this transition from full-time education to now finding myself, I found that there was a real need to work directly with the community. And a way of doing that was, first and foremost, really considering what my vision is. And my vision, my personal vision was seeing young girls who are from a South Asian community, one, enjoy the game, but actually how wonderful would it be to see a South Asian girl playing for England? And that was in 2011 when I took the career change. Now that I'm full-time and have a full-time job, I still partner with external agencies that will have their own base from which they work, and work directly in various communities, mainly in London, just purely based on my demographic. And one example is Show Racism the Red Card, who I've been working with for over 10 years and will still commit on my days off. But an example of how we would then work is utilizing my experiences, whether it's in education or in football, and deliver anti-racism work, linking it to the game, because there are synergies around accessibility, inclusion, what that looks like, identity. And then the other aspect that I also speak about from my own personal experience is actually around mental resilience, working in a male space, and allyship, and what that then looks like for the teachers, or if it's a workforce delivery, it would then be tailored. But in this example, what can educators do who actually hold this incredible power to influence change when they are directly working with these young people? And other examples would be linking with other grassroots community clubs. So, for instance, this evening, I'm going to go down to Indian Gymkhana, who are based in West London, and have this wonderful setup of girls. And recently, they all received copies of my book, Dream Like Me, which has these amazing role models and stories of resilience. And, and it'd be great to be able to go and visit them. And, I'm going to deliver a session, have a chat, work with have a chat and work with the coaches. But just being able to do that, I think, every so often is important, because it doesn't directly have to be through my organization as such, because it is, quite difficult when you have a full-time job and that actually you still want to do so much more. However, I found partnering with other organizations who do this wonderful work already has allowed me to still be active in the community.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And you certainly pack in a lot. And speaking of your fascinating book, Dream Like Me, South Asian Football Blazers, what an amazing idea you've got here. It's much more than a book about inspiring stories, because at the end of each story, you ask the reader to consider some questions that relate to some of the challenges faced by these people who they've just read about. So can you actually tell us a little bit more about this book? Who is it for? And why did you choose to write it?
So the ideas were, I suppose, already in my head through the years of going through the game and not seeing people like me. So as I was playing as a youngster in the early 80s, as I was then going on coaching courses and not seeing people that look like me, also seeing many women, and then transitioning into the professional game in the, again, yes, it being a male space, but not seeing that many South Asian people in general within the professional game. But more so for me, my lens was on coaching and management. But I recognized, particularly with the book, that there was a real need to showcase and highlight those that are pioneering, but in different disciplines, because some may not want to be a footballer. Some may want to be a doctor, be a psychologist, be a sports scientist. And this was about illustrating that you can have a career in a football club, which doesn't just have to be as a player or be a coach. And the educator in me mapped out.
That's it, isn't it? I could see that in the questions and little sections that you've left open for them to write their notes in.
Absolutely. And for me, it was, I didn't just want it as a book where, okay, well, I've read the pages and I've read the story and it was wonderful. It was, how can I get this into schools? How can we really widen the reach? And after speaking with the publisher, It was about making sure that there's learning, and that learning for me was coming as a result of the depth of the stories shared by the individual, but more so, how can we really get these young people to be reflective on the story in a way which gets them to perhaps think differently or cement existing learning. And what was really nice also was the fact that each individual gave their own personal lesson for good mental health, because as much as it shares individuals who are pioneering in football across different disciplines, actually the premise of this was around positive mental health, around stories of resilience, and actually how we can really teach children to build these like muscles that we have in the brain to be adaptable, which in turn can then help kids to have these resilience skills that they can use not just in football but in life.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful illustration of how, we can achieve things, but there's often challenges, and then we have to find ways to overcome them. So giving them the opportunity to reflect on all of the different challenges that these people have faced, so that they themselves can approach, their aspirations with a bit of a kind of a realistic understanding about what success is as well. So it's a fantastic book, and it's great that it's being used. It's being used in schools, and that people are able to benefit from it. So I'm going to move now to the final part of our interview, which is questions that we ask all of our guests. And the first one is, do you have any guilty pleasures?
Yeah, I love popcorn. That would be that. I could eat popcorn. Popcorn and ice cream are two things that I absolutely love. So it would be, I could eat popcorn all day, every day.
Sweet or savoury?
I like mixed, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I do like the mix.
Brilliant. Now, you've achieved an awful lot, and I'm not expecting you have more things on your bucket list, but if you did, what's something else on your bucket list that you'd like to accomplish?
To want to have a global impact on the game. I don't know what that looks like yet, but definitely to touch as many lives as possible, particularly girls, and particularly those who come from a South Asian background, to enjoy the game, but also wider for me, from I suppose, a personal perspective, is also those who aspire to be coaches, and hopefully see the next England footballer, or even another South Asian female coach who is managing the WSL.
Yeah, we'll go for it. I'm sure you can make it happen. You've achieved so much so far. Final question. Is there a book or a film or a podcast that you've really enjoyed, but that has inspired you to be well?
I would say I would recommend that listeners really look at Lavina Mehta's work, and The Feel Good Fix is her recent book, because it just caters for anyone and everyone. And I think particularly those who perhaps may not like going to the gym, or, where there's time constraints, or feel that, no, that space isn't for us. Her stuff is brilliant, because you can do it from your own home, and it caters for all age groups.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Manisha. It's been wonderful talking to you. What a story you have, and there's so much more I'm sure we'll hear from you and about you. I really, really appreciate your time today.
No problem. Thank you very much.